Welcome, Councilwoman McIver. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Max, for having me. It's a pleasure to be on. You know, Insider is one of my favorites, so definitely good to be on with you today.
Well, we appreciate that. And just figured I'd start with you if we could. You are running for re-election this year in the Central Ward of Newark. And
yes,
there is an inclusionary zoning ordinance, a vaunted ordinance that the mayor revisited and the city council revisited just yesterday. How has this ordinance impacted your ward?
well, for the Central Ward, we have the majority of development here in the city. And so there's always projects that are going up that are mixed use, including, residential and commercial space, sometimes just residential. So the IZO ordinance definitely impacts us heavily in the Central Ward. We're always at, conversations with developers about the different levels and the different layers of the IZO and the compliance piece. The new amendments that came out yesterday that I proudly sponsored, just kind of, makes less layers as we continue to push forward and grow our, city as well as the Central Ward in development. We have a shortage. There is no secret. We have a challenge with affordable housing here in the city, which is not just a city thing. I think in all urban cities, and even listening to our local state legislators this past week talk about, affordability here in the state of New Jersey, we have a severe issue, with having affordable housing throughout the state and especially here in the city of Newark. And so we are looking at ways and have been looking at ways of how do we limit that, right? How do we make more accessible, affordable housing here in the city? And so one of those ways of doing that was the initial IZO ordinance that was passed in 2017. But since then, we've seen some, progress with it. We've seen some, some pros, some cons, and we thought that it was very imperative for us to come together as the Equitable Growth Commission here in the city, as well with our mayor and our EHD team, to make some necessary changes to the current IZO, at least some recommendations. And that's what we did yesterday. The council passed that. And, for the most part, I know I'm excited as a Central Ward councilwoman, where I will be able to, limit some of the layers of the current IZO ordinance to be able to get more affordable housing out of, the new development that's coming up in the ward.
And the base ordinance requires developers to put a certain percentage of affordable housing into all projects developed in Newark, correct?
Correct.
And so has this ordinance been specifically a part of development projects in your ward since 2017? And I assume the answer is yes, but has the required affordable housing gone into the ward or into other parts of the city?
So it differs. This is the different layers that I'm talking about that was available prior to yesterday's recommendations for the amendments. So developers have to comply with the IZO, but they have options. They have options to either put 20% of affordable housing on their property, the development that they're building, or they can post to the city to do offsite affordable housing, or they can say, you know what, I'm not interested in affordable housing at all. I'm just going to pay the payment in lieu, which would then they would pay. It's $25,000 currently a unit to put that into affordable house trust fund, which then doesn't necessarily go to the Central Ward. Like it might be to support projects that are in the West, the East, different locations depending on what the need is and where we're building at the time. However, just with those changes, you can see like some of the problems. One, I want to have affordable housing as the Central Ward councilwoman on the sites that we're building, rather it's downtown, Broad and Market, or whatever the case might be. People should have the right to be able to live in these new developments, and not for you to say as the developer, well, I'm going to build up in the ward on South 10th Street versus allowing affordability to be on the site on Broad and Market Street. So those are one of the things that I really support, because this new amendment doesn't give you that option to do that as a developer anymore. So you're not able to do off-site development for affordability only. Then we were requiring $25,000 that I mentioned, and that's just not enough to build, housing in the city, not to do any project. And so we've upped the price per unit for affordable units if you want to pay into the trust. So that's still an option available to developers who don't want to necessarily build affordable housing on site, but they rather say, hey, I'm going to do payment in lieu and pay the required amount, which would be whatever they were supposed to have of affordability on their project times 180,000, dollars per unit. So it gives us a little bit more to add to our affordable housing trust fund so that we can, build more affordable units if we're looking to go that way.
And how then do you determine where the trust fund monies go? How do you compete for those monies as the various ward leaders?
So basically, it's really a administration kind of, tool where they are making recommendations to the council of where they see the money going. Since my term of being in office, I've seen sometimes when they might have put out for RFPs for affordable housing, offering, developers to come and apply, where they use some of the the affordable trust fund to help fund like smaller developers projects, or developers in general. They don't have to be small per se to build more affordability on their projects that they're building. So it's a mixture of how they do it, but really it's a tool where they're recommending to the council of this is what we're, spending our affordable house fund, trust fund monies on, this is what we're doing. But because we have a great working relationship, in the administration and the council, we spend a lot of time talking about what the focus is, what the goal is, where do we want to see such and such, where do we want to go? I only could speak to when it comes to my ward of me working with the administration of where we see, we need to have, funds put here and there to support this project, X, Y, and Z. So it really is a case by case, scenario.
Recognizing that the alterations to the ordinance will in fact enable more specified affordable housing. Do you have any sense of how many units it's supplied to date since you all put the ordinance into effect?
So I don't have the exact number with me right now, so I can't quote an exact number. But I mean, just pushing forward, we're looking to, with this new amendment and even with some of the new initiatives, we're looking to at least get another about 10,000 units out of this new amendment, as well as some of the already plans that we have in place to support some of the affordable housing.
Now, the Central Ward is obviously classically, perhaps, the most developed ward in the city of Newark. And during your tenure, what have been some of the projects there that have contributed to the new look of the Central Ward?
So we've had quite a few, just to name a few. We've had Boulevard West, which is a mixed use it's affordable, but mixed use affordable, mixed income affordable, excuse me. That's on Irvin Turner Boulevard. It's with us, Michael's Development. They did a great job on the project. A wonderful, transformation of Irvin Turner Boulevard as we continue to have some new development coming. We've had Somerset Brownstones, which before me was a project that sat probably for like 11 to 12 years of just getting to a completion, getting to a place of completion. We finally got there and we built brownstones that are, of course, mixed income affordable units, as well as that accompany a park that's still under construction that should be finished by late spring. Very excited about that project. The residents who have seen that area where we used to have, projects, high-rise projects, and just a lot of different crime issues. And I mean, it was just a overlay of just a lot of problems in the area. To see the area transform and to have development, to see the area cleaned up. Definitely residents are happy about that. We've had the Walker Building that was built downtown Newark through L&M. It's the transformation of the old telephone building, a historic preservation project that, definitely it's the 20% is on site there. So that's the IZO total compliance, where there has 20% affordable, but then it also has majority of market rate units, but a project that definitely we raved about when we opened it, and definitely transformed, started the transformation of that, north end of Broad Street. And then lastly, I would say Rector, which is the Shaquille O'Neal's building, 50 Rector, Du Bois. That was a huge project. It is 100% market rate. It doesn't have any affordable units on it, but the project itself was already in the works before 2017. So it was one of those historic projects that, well, I want to say a historic time anyway, a project that took a while to get to where it was at then. It's just that it was developed and actually, ribbon cut during the time of the IZO in place, but it started before 2017. So those are just to name a few of some projects that we've, cut ribbons on, opened up, residents have moved in, that has, assisted with some transformation of the Central Ward. And we have plenty more coming.
I took a walk recently in the Central Ward around the area of the university and just noticed more coffee shops, bohemian hangouts, swanky little underground cavities, and very interesting places. And some of them I hadn't seen until pretty recently.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of different small businesses. Some of these businesses opened up during COVID, which was, really brave of folks to be doing that during this time. But we are trying to build our small businesses and get more businesses to come. I know I love the place, Boss Bling Coffee. It's like one of those bohemian places that's on Halsey Street. Just to think about this bohemian vibe, it's really nice. But we have a few places that have opened up, which is really nice because it's starting to give residents and of course businesses, our major businesses, more variety.
So you were born and raised in the Central Ward. And
Yes.
when you look at the arc of time, what do you think have been the most significant changes in your lifetime in the Central Ward?
So for me, I think being like, I can't really speak going back. People will say, oh, 40, 50 years ago. I'm 35. So it's a short period of time compared to those who've been in the war for 60 to 70 years. But just in my time, I grew up in a place called New Hope Village. And when I was in third grade, there was no place called like a Society Hills that's across the street. It's actually a wonderful home ownership, phase of apartments that are up and down the University Heights section of the Central Ward, West Market. They're lovely. That was not there. That was all dirt land when I was a kid. We had like a penny candy trailer that we used to go to on site. So I just feel like a lot of development has changed the ward over time, adding more residential, adding more businesses. It's more vibrant now. I think that we've, of course, the ward has become more diverse. It's very diverse. We have, I don't think any ward you can, you can go to in a city where you have like a college hub, then you have like a business hub, and then you have like residential, then you have like, really artsy community. It's a really blended
True.
ward, and I think, to be able to see that transformation, to have a place of diversity and different, groups of residents all, cohesively, living together in one ward. It's a beautiful thing, right? I think we, definitely have to make more progress. We have challenges that we're still dealing with. But, for me, thinking about it as a kid, as I can remember to now, there's definitely been some progress for sure.
I think too about the political stories of the ward, even just over the last 20 to 25 years. It's been a volatile ward politically. And I'm going back now to, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was Cory Booker defeating George Branch in the Central Ward. And it was the ward that now Senator Booker used to build his citywide operation. And then coming forward in time, Eddie Osborne fought Charles Bell there, and for the vacant seat after Dana Roan left, and then Sharif versus Bell, and then you came along and after Cheney Field Jenkins, and so there's been a lot of change. What is that change in volatility to you suggested? You mentioned how the ward has all these diverse elements. And have some of these political collisions been a consequence of all these differing interests, perhaps?
Um, I wouldn't really say that. I think the one thing that it has done is it hasn't created stability in leadership, and consistency, and that's a problem. Like, right? So every year, like, every 4 years, residents are like, "Oh, who's running now? Like, what's going on now? What's the drama now?" And it's like at the end of the day, that's really not helpful. To the progress and the work that needs to be done. When you have a lot of turnover and there's a new council person every 4 years, you can't make the success that you need to make. Like, you're just starting, then you got to get used to somebody new. I mean, a lot of the groundwork that I had to lay just in these whole 4 years, I mean, that was a lot of work, like, in getting out to just, gain people's trust, gain residents' trust, be transparent with them, be visible, change their perception. I remember telling you before that when I was running, people were like, "I don't care about voting. Like, I'm not interested, because at the end of the day, politicians, I'm over it here in the Central Ward. I don't even know who the council person is now. Like, it's just dramatic." And to me, it was like, "Oh my God, you know who the council person is?" Like, it made me want to just do this whole thing of trying to just be in front of people, trying to have conversation with them. I pride myself in going to community meetings and giving community events, because that is just the amount of work you had to do to kind of gain the trust of the people and, be visible, like, and just put some, I want to say some, hope, which is what I ran on the first term, some hope into them believing in leadership and knowing that they can call leadership, making ourselves available and just educating folks on, what we do, how you can get in contact with us, and how we can be of assistance to you. And that's been a lot, just getting people engaged. So I think all of these different wars of political, drama that has happened in the past years has not been helpful. It's definitely, deterred people from really believing in leadership and really, gaining interest in it. Like, right, it's like being a teacher and you come in, you're teaching something like totally new every day. You're not sticking to the script. Students are not going to be engaged. They're like, "Oh my God, like, it's always something new. I can't even be engaged." You have to, have some stability and some consistency with leadership, and it's just been constant battles, over the years of politicalness. So, that is one of the reasons why I decided to run for a second term, to come back and finish the work that, we started. It's just impossible to get it all done in just 4 years. I don't think I'm going to be a 30-year, person into this seat. But at the end of the day, we definitely need to finish the work that we started. And the people deserve consistency. They deserve, some stability in their leadership in the ward. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to come back and finish the work we started.
How did an English literature major get into politics?
So when I was 10, I had attended a school called Warren Street School. It was a school that no longer exists in the Central Ward. And my teacher was a young guy who was running for office. He was, real young, hip. We like, "Oh, we like this guy. He's really cool." He used to always, have fun with students, a great teacher. And it was Ras Baraka, our current mayor, and we kind of got involved in the civic process, which as young people, we had no idea what that meant, like what was running for office. And he taught us about that. And he said, "Hey, if you guys are like want to free, you want to come by, volunteer, do that." And for me, people don't believe this story, but I was a really, really bad kid. Like, I used to fight all the time, just be involved in things that I shouldn't be involved in as a 10-year-old. And so getting involved in the organization at the time, it really deterred me from taking that anger that I had and wanting to be involved in fights at school to focusing on voter registration, learning about that at 10 and learning about what it means to get the vote out, what's GOTV, what's clothing drives, what's food drives. And I started doing that, and I stayed doing that until like now. And it was a really great experience. But to fast forward, when I decided to go to college, I was going to be an English teacher. I wanted to do that. I'm like, I'm going to be a teacher. This is great for me. And I was working at Newark Public Schools already in their human resources department. Well, moving fast forward, I'm like, you know what? I went to like a classroom observation one day, and I think I was like wearing all black, and some kids threw like erasers on me. This is when we were using like chalk and eraser. They threw it at me, and I was like, wow, today was really bad. I don't think I'm going to be a teacher, like, anymore. I think I'm just going to stick to, working in human resources and, doing what I do. But I loved literature. Like, I loved English literature. I loved my teacher and advisor at the time. So I stayed with it because, she said, even if you change your mind and you want to teach moving down the road, you can still do that. So I stayed with the English literature. So it's like politics found me first and English literature found me later. Just
Well,
FYI.
that's fascinating. And let me ask you this. When you had Raz Baraka as a teacher, was he specifically teaching civics? Because he could have also
No.
taught poetry, right? Or was it a mix?
He was teaching language arts
Language
literacy,
arts. Okay.
in English, yeah. And he was teaching us at the time we were like 10 years old. He was like teaching us like Emily Dickinson, like, pulling out the college level books to read to us. And it was poetry as well that he was teaching. The civics was just part-time, like, when we had time to talk about that.
Right,
But we were
right.
strictly in the class to learn about language arts, reading English. That was his whole piece. And the civics part was just after school. He was the basketball coach too. So we used to chill in the gym, like, after school and just, learn about the whole political process.
Well, it's interesting because it's a very politically charged, in the truest sense, poetry that he was teaching, right? It was really a textured civics, sports, full immersion poetry, not
Yes.
something rarefied or in an ivory tower. And
Yeah.
when he speaks, even now, he sounds poetic.
Yeah. Yeah. All the time. Yeah.
So what are some of the works that you've carried with you, and particularly in the context of your own civic engagement? Are there literary works that you refer to or that you recommend to your political allies?
Oh my God. I mean, I love like just authors of, works surrounded around James Baldwin, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, the autobiography of Malcolm X. Those are all things I feel like have shaped me, although I'm like always reading different things, even up into this time. I mean, the times change, right? So you have to, change the literature a little bit to, read things. I could tell you I haven't been back to Shakespeare since leaving college, but some of the things just, that shaped me till today, that stay with me, are things like that W.E.B. Du Bois, those, all works surrounding around that. Right now, I'm reading things like The Purpose of Power, Call Us What We I can't think of it, Call Us What We can't think of the actual thing, but it's by Amanda Gorman. Just reading some of those works as of right now. But you have to continue to read and keep yourself. Most of the time, I'm reading mostly legislation right now.
I understand. Yeah,
But
I understand.
so you don't get that much luxury reading. But you have to stay. Try to have some personal reading as well to building character.
So you talk about building character and serving as the Central Ward Councilwoman during the COVID-19 crisis. Could you tell me a little bit about that? What were your specific challenges and what were the needs of your constituents? What did you experience? How bad was it? And what are your thoughts about where you all are now going forward?
So, I mean, to be honest, I never thought I would be becoming a council person and leading in the middle of a global pandemic. It was a bit like unbelievable. I always say I'm going to write a book about the whole journey of it, and even still today. Then, when we were in the midst of it, and it was like at height, and you just didn't know if you were going left to right, on one day people were very scared. The residents were really scared. They didn't know what was going on. People were, needing masks. They were needing hand sanitizer. They were needing disinfectant spray, food shortages. There were so many things that were going on at the time that it was just really unreal to process. But the one thing that like I did as a council person was to really try to be still visible in the middle of a pandemic. And that was difficult. We were, trying to go door to door, giving out food boxes, giving out lunches. I partnered with a lot of great organizations during the height of that time to offer food, offer meals, give masks. People were making masks from different organizations, sending it to us to give to residents. So we had to be out every day. And that's really, scary as a leader sometimes, especially when you have a family and you're worried about your own health. You have to be on the front lines. And so that was most of the time what I spent doing. We were running into so many different issues, especially with my senior buildings. Out of the entire ward, the entire city, I have the most senior locations. I have 20 senior buildings with,
High rises.
hundreds of, high rises, hundreds of people that were impacted drastically. Folks were passing away from COVID, that we were so stretched that sometimes, people did not even have the ability to get like bodies out of buildings because, the ambulance services were backed up, the morgues were like overloaded. Funeral homes were overloaded. So, we had to think of all types of creative ways to be able to address these different issues that we were running into every day. And we did it. I think I give a lot of kudos to our mayor too, because, he did a really great job in, helping coordinate the efforts of a lot of what we needed to do. Like we spoke every day. We had a call every day with the council, the mayor, the administration, just with updates, what we're doing today, counts. This was a full-fledged, operation in terms of just, keeping everything together every day. And then when different scenarios came up, thinking like, what are we going to do with this? Like, how do we do this, and brainstorming it and really working together. So it was really a collaborative, effort amongst everyone because everyone was dealing with different issues. The main issue was hubs around COVID-19, but, every day it was something new, of what you had to kind of deal with. But for me, we made it a business to just be out there every day, trying to make residents see me with the mask on and feel, like, okay, there's some hope. It's not like a zombie world out here. Like we're not just, all by ourselves. And I think that gave people at least some ease, at least a little bit that we can offer during that time. Every week, every day we would pop up. We would set up a table. We would say, hey, food delivery on this day, at this block, like, come on by if you're in the house, grab a mask, grab some food, grab some literature, information about testing and thus far, so that, you know what's going on and you know how to, get the information that you need during this time. I think now, fast forward to now, we're at a safer place, right? The rates are down. People are feeling, sometimes you go to places, you're like, oh, COVID's over. No one's wearing a mask. Sometimes I go to places, I'm the only one with the mask on. But for the most part, the rates are down, people feel more comfortable and the world is trying to push forward, which is a good thing. But, after having the last spike that we had just 2 months ago, you're like, okay, are we feeling real comfortable, or we think a new variant is going to come and, just put us back where we started? And I don't think we're ever really going back to where we started the first go round of this. But I do think people are, trying to get into the normalness of things again.
Newark remains one of the towns in New Jersey whose school system continues to enforce a mask mandate. Your thoughts?
So I think it's smart of the superintendent. I think the school board has made a smart decision. It goes back to my comment I just made. People still feel a little on edge about, hey, are we going to get another variant? Are we going to go back to where we just were 2 months ago? I know people are sick of masks. I totally understand. I don't know when the last time I wore like lipstick, to be able to, feel normal again, or just to be able to see people smile. But I think you have to play it safe, especially when you talk about our most precious gems that we have, which are our young people, making sure that they're safe. Because the last thing we want to see happen is us having to shut down schools again, because that was a disaster. I think we're all seeing the effects in different locations, but especially in our urban school districts. We're shutting down our schools for that long. really implemented more problems for our young people, more social issues that they're dealing with, more emotional issues that they're dealing with. And we're trying to play catch up to that. So I just don't think we need to be in a place where we're vulnerable to be able to have to shut down schools again for our babies. But I do understand that people, want to discard the mask because it's just getting tiring and kids feel, overwhelmed with doing that. But as a mom, of a kindergartner, I just feel like, we need to play it safe, safer, better safer than sorry, especially with our babies.
I wanted to ask you too, it just seems like your 4 years in office were really filled with drama and challenge, going to the lead crisis and how that has impacted the ward, and where are you now in terms of replacing these lead lines?
So yes, the water crisis was another, challenge that we had to deal with. Once again, our mayor jumped in, had a plan. We worked through it, and look at us now. We're here with only a few lead line services that we're still addressing and working with. For the most part, all of them have been changed. We changed over 23,000, close to 28,000 lead service lines here in the city, and still in counting. In a central ward, we are governed. We have a lot of bigger buildings. There's a lot of apartment buildings, a lot of larger complexes. So we didn't necessarily have a lot of home ownership of, changing lead service lines. We did have some, that we had to address, but not as large as, your more wards that have a lot of, single family homes, 2 to 3 family homes that they had to deal with. But at the end of the day, it impacted us all, because regardless if you're saying, we had people who were in bigger buildings and they're like, I have lead. We're like, no, you don't have lead in your water. It's only these homes that have it. People, get to hearing all of the drama that was going on, a lot of the miscommunication that was out there in the media, confusing some of the information, which then they start to think, well, I have lead too. So it was a lot of, education, a lot of going around talking to different residents, putting out the right information, and fixing it, because that's ultimately all people want to hear is like, is it fixed? Like, are you fixing it? What are we doing now? But I think kudos to all that was involved in that, especially our director of water and sewer, our mayor, and everyone who really played in the county, who played a big part in helping us, get it fixed. And now we're a model. We're a model city for many who need to still change their lead service line. So, it's like, when you have a negative challenge that impacts you, it's like it turns into a positive, towards the end, which is really what people should be looking forward to in leadership. How do you change? The challenges are going to come, right? It's how do you change that challenge into progress, into a success, at the end of the road.
Councilwoman, we talked about the past volatility of the ward, and I'm not sensing that there's a lot of that this time, perhaps because you have been so engaged and on the ground. There is another race unfolding, not the May partisan cycle, but in the June primary, there's a congressional race with incumbent Congressman Donald Payne running. He has a challenger, Amani Oakley. Do you have a sense of that race? How are you endorsing anyone in that contest?
Yes. So, I mean, yeah, I've been keeping up with the race. Of course, my ward falls within the 10th district. So definitely keeping up to par of who is running and what's happening. I'm definitely 150% supporting Congressman Payne to return. I think he's done a great job advocating for the city of Newark. And I only can speak for the city of Newark, advocating for us in DC and, at the federal level. And, we love him here in the city, and we're definitely supporting him to return and do what he's been doing, for our residents here in the city of Newark.
And I do hope we get to talk again, and I hope it's soon. I would like to ask you this last question, and that is, and we did touch on it in City Hall a couple of weeks ago, but when you look at facing the voters in May, what do you want to remind them about as they make an educated choice?
So I think what I want to remind them about is just thinking about our city going forward, our ward going forward. Thinking about who is the best choice, who's the best vision, the difference between the candidates that they're choosing from. who's going to take them to the next level versus people who are, negative, putting us back into a time where we do not need to be, and we need to be focused on moving forward. Thinking about those times that I've been, there for many residents, I've been visible, I've been transparent. We don't always deliver the number one answer that everybody, wants, but we deliver a truthful answer. We deliver a, expedient answer. Sometimes some folks have been waiting years for different answers, and we delivered those, right away. But I think people should think about where they want to go, what's the best leadership for them, and to think about really moving forward and think about not just themselves, but to think about the generations that are coming behind them. A lot of people who are parents thinking about their children, thinking about, not setting us back, but pushing us forward, and which candidate is going to do that for them. That's what I would think about if I had to, when I'm voting for people, or where I'm thinking about, where I want to be, like, where we're going. Many times I tell residents, nothing's perfect. It's not perfection. Nothing is perfection. But the one thing you have to be honest with yourself is, have you seen progress? Have you seen some things change with, the way that the city is moving forward, the way that the Central Ward is moving forward? And if you have, then there's been progress. Yeah, that doesn't mean that there's no other progress to make. Yeah, there's plenty more progress to make. But I think, focusing on the progress that we have made and where we're moving to, where we're heading to, is definitely something that I want residents to be able to really think about when making a decision for this upcoming May election. And think about the candidates' qualifications. Line the candidates up. Whoever is running against me, line me up to them and say, think about what she has done. Think about her credentials, her background, and compare that to the candidates that are running against me, and make a rash decision on what's best for you, and your family, and the leadership you want to see in your ward. And I hope that it's me.
Councilwoman, I just am so happy that we were able to secure this interview today, and I want to thank you so much for your time.
Of course. No, thank you as always, Max. And I hope that we get a chance to speak again. I'm sure we will. And anything that you need, definitely, feel free to contact me. Thanks for reporting all the time.
Thank you so much. Thank you.